The fog clung to the ancient stones of Thornbury Hall like a shroud, muffling the distant howl of the wind across the Yorkshire moors. It was the evening of October 15th, 1928, and within the opulent dining room, candlelight flickered over silver and crystal, casting elongated shadows that danced like spectres. Lord Archibald Thornbury, master of the estate, raised his goblet in a toast to his assembled guests, his young wife, Lady Evelyn, his estranged son, Reginald, the family physician, Dr. Harlan Whittaker, and the enigmatic secretary, Miss Victoria Langford. "To prosperity," he declared, his voice robust yet edged with unspoken tension. He sipped the ruby wine, then gasped, clutching his throat as convulsions racked his frame. The goblet shattered on the parquet floor, wine pooling like blood. Amid the chaos of screams and overturned chairs, one question hung unspoken. Who had poisoned the Lord of Thornbury Hall? Chapter 1. The Shadow of Suspicion. The fog that cloaked Thornbury Hall on the evening of October 15th, 1928, seemed to seep into the very bones of the ancient estate, curling around its weathered stones like a spectral embrace. The Yorkshire moors, stretching endlessly beyond, whispered with the wind, their mournful sighs barely audible over the clink of crystal and silver in the dining room. Within, the air was thick with opulence and unease, the chandelier casting a golden glow over the long mahogany table where Lord Archibald Thornbury presided. His guests, Lady Evelyn, his strikingly young wife, Reginald, his estranged son, Dr. Harlan Whittaker, the family physician, and Miss Victoria Langford, the enigmatic secretary, sat in a tableau of forced civility. The Lord raised his goblet, the ruby wine catching the light like a bloodied jewel. "To prosperity," he declared, his voice resonant yet tinged with a brittleness that betrayed some hidden strain. He sipped, then froze. A gasp tore from his throat as his hands clawed at his collar, his face twisting into a mask of agony. The goblet slipped, shattering on the parquet floor, wine pooling like a dark omen. Convulsions seized him, and
emerald gown, pristine despite the night's horror. At 28, she was a vision of composed beauty, her actress's poise unshaken even by death. Yet her eyes, green as the moors in spring, held a flicker of something, grief or perhaps calculation. "Poison in the wine, madam," Japp said, his tone gruff as he addressed her. "Only his goblet was tainted. Who poured it?" Lady Evelyn's lips curved into a faint, mournful smile. "I did, Inspector, as did the others. Archibald insisted we all share in the ritual of passing the decanter. A family tradition, he called it." Her voice was smooth, cultured, with the barest trace of her theatrical past. Japp's gaze shifted to Reginald Thornbury, who paced near the fireplace, his youthful features flushed with emotion. At 22, he bore his father's high cheekbones, but none of his gravitas, his disheveled blonde hair and rumpled suit suggesting a man unmoored. Disinherited after a scandal involving a married woman in London, he had returned only days ago, ostensibly to mend ties. "Father was a tyrant," he muttered, his voice low but audible. "He drove me out, cut me off. But I didn't kill him. I wouldn't." Dr. Harlan Whittaker, a wiry man in his 50s with thinning hair and spectacles that magnified his nervous eyes, adjusted his cuffs. "Lord Thornbury had enemies, Inspector. Business rivals, creditors. His coal mines were faltering, debts piled high. His hands trembled as he spoke, betraying a man less steady than his professional veneer suggested. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, sat apart, her notebook clutched like a talisman. Hired 6 months prior, she was a woman of quiet intensity, her auburn hair pulled into a severe bun, her gray eyes unreadable. When Japp pressed her, she spoke softly. "I was merely taking notes during dinner, as always. I poured no wine." Japp scratched his chin, the weight of the case settling heavily. The dining room offered little immediate clarity. The shattered goblet, the untouched plates, the decanter that tests would later confirm held no poison. Miss Langford vanished to her small office, her door closing with a soft click. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing the stark beauty of the estate. Its sprawling lawns, its ancient oaks, its secrets buried deep. The servants whispered of old scandals, Lord Thornbury's first wife, dead under mysterious circumstances, Reginald's disgrace, the widow's rapid rise from the stage to the manor. Each tidbit was a thread in a tapestry Poirot would soon unravel. In the dining room, an officer found a curious detail. A single glove, silk and delicate, tucked beneath a chair. Lady Evelyn's, or another's? Japp bagged it, his brow furrowing. The glove bore no stains, no scent, but its presence felt deliberate, a puzzle piece misplaced. Meanwhile, in the village, word of the murder spread like wildfire. The local inn buzzed with speculation. Was it the widow, hungry for the estate? The son, seeking revenge? The doctor, hiding some medical misdeed? Or the quiet secretary, whose past was as opaque as the moor's mist? Back at the hall, a maid confided in Japp as she brought tea. "There's talk, sir, of letters in the attic. Old ones, from the first Lady Thornbury. Might mean something." Her voice trembled as if speaking the words invited danger. Japp nodded, making a note. The attic, the cellar, the glove, the motives. It was a labyrinth, and he was no Theseus. But Poirot would see the pattern, the order in the chaos. As the clock struck 6, a telegram confirmed the detective's arrival by noon. The household braced for his scrutiny, each member cloaked in their own veil of suspicion. The wind howled louder now, rattling the windows as if the moors themselves demanded answers. In the library, a book on toxicology lay slightly askew, its pages dog-eared. A clue or a careless hand? The question lingered as the chapter drew to a close, the shadow of suspicion deepening over Thornbury Hall. In the distance, a train's whistle sounded, heralding the arrival of Hercule Poirot, whose little grey cells would soon illuminate the darkness. But for now, the hall remained a stage of secrets, each grey expanse. Hardly the setting for a holiday. Poirot's green eyes sparkled with amusement. "Mon ami, the English countryside, so picturesque, yet so adept at hiding its secrets. It is not for holidays we are here, but for murder." His voice, lightly accented, carried a note of relish, as if the challenge of a crime invigorated him. They were met by Inspector Japp, whose burly frame and bristling moustache emerged from a waiting car. "Poirot, old chap, you're a sight for sore eyes," Japp said, shaking his hand with vigor. "This one's a proper mess. Cyanide in the wine, quick as you like. Lord Thornbury dead in minutes at his own dinner table. Suspects: the widow, the son, the doctor, and a secretary. Motives thicker than this fog." As they drove toward Thornbury Hall, the road winding through gnarled oaks and heather-strewn hills, Japp briefed them. "Lord Archibald Thornbury, Coal Baron, 56. Wealthy, or so it seemed. Rumours of debts, though. Found dead last night after a toast. Cyanide in his goblet, none in the decanter. Family tradition, they say. Everyone passes the wine. Makes it tricky." Poirot's fingers tapped his cane. "The victim's fortune, Inspector? It comes from these mines, oui?" "Aye, coal mostly. But word is the mines were failing. Bad investments, creditors circling. Will leaves most to the wife, Lady Evelyn. Young, you know, former actress. Tongues wagged when they married." "And the others?" Poirot pressed. his mind already sifting details. Reginald, the son, 22, disinherited after some scandal, ran off with a married woman, came back begging forgiveness. Dr. Whittaker, family physician, seems nervous. Miss Langford, the secretary, quiet, sharp, but cagey. Hired 6 months ago, no clear past. The car pulled up to Thornbury Hall, its Gothic silhouette looming through the mist. Towers flanked the stone facade, ivy clinging like veins, and the windows glowed faintly, as if reluctant to reveal the secrets within. Poirot stepped out, his gaze sweeping the grounds. A fine stage for a crime, n'est-ce pas? Inside,
Man is dead, poisoned in this very house. I will ask questions, and I expect answers, truthful ones. His voice was calm but carried an edge that silenced the room. He began with Lady Evelyn. Madame, you poured the wine, oui? Describe the moment. Her lips parted in a faint smile. I did, Monsieur Poirot, as did the others. Archibald loved his rituals. We passed the decanter, Reginald, Dr. Whittaker, Miss Langford, myself. I filled his goblet last. Her tone was smooth, but her fingers twisted a silk handkerchief. Poirot turned to Reginald. Monsieur, you were estranged from your father. Why return now? Reginald's jaw tightened. To make peace. He cut me off after mistakes. I wanted back in the family, not his money. His eyes darted to his stepmother, a flash of resentment passing. Dr. Whittaker cleared his throat. Lord Thornbury was under strain. Business troubles, health concerns. I prescribed sedatives, nothing more. And you, Mademoiselle Langford? Poirot's gaze fixed on the secretary. What did you see? She hesitated, her gray eyes meeting his briefly. I was taking notes, as always. I passed the decanter but didn't pour. I was distracted by the conversation. Poirot's mustache twitched. Inconsistencies already. He paced, noting the library's details. A misplaced book on toxicology, its spine cracked. A smudge on the decanter, too faint for immediate analysis. A rug slightly askew, as if moved recently. The poison was in the goblet alone, he mused aloud. But how did it arrive there? Hastings, ever eager, interjected. Could it have been slipped in during the toast? Possible, mon ami, but unlikely. The act was precise. We must consider the cellar, the preparation, the motives. Japp, hovering nearby, produced a silk glove found under the dining table. Lady Evelyn's, perhaps? She shook her head. I wore none last night. Check with the maids. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A red herring, perhaps, but a clue nonetheless. He questioned the servants, who confirmed the decanter was filled in the cellar by Harrow, the butler, hours before dinner. The cellar key was kept in the butler's typewriter. Lady Evelyn's alibi was equally vague. She had been arranging flowers in the conservatory, alone. The interviews revealed a web of tensions. Lord Thornbury's coal empire was crumbling, debts mounting. Lady Evelyn stood to inherit a fortune, though whispers of bankruptcy clouded its value. Reginald's disinheritance fueled his bitterness, yet he claimed love for his father. Dr. Whittaker's nervous demeanor suggested hidden guilt, professional or personal. Miss Langford's reticence hinted at secrets beyond her role. As noon approached, a maid approached Poirot, her voice low. Sir, there's talk of letters in the attic, old ones, from the first Lady Thornbury. Might mean something. Her eyes darted nervously toward the library. Poirot nodded. Merci, mademoiselle. The past, it often speaks to the present. He and Hastings climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, dust motes dancing in their lantern's beam. Trunks lined the walls, filled with relics of the Thornbury legacy. Among them, a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon caught Poirot's eye. The handwriting was elegant, dated 20 years prior from a woman named Clara, Lord Thornbury's first wife, who died falling from a cliff. One letter, penned by a younger Dr. Whittaker, hinted at intimacy. Blackmail, perhaps? Poirot murmured.
Hastings frowned. You think Whittaker was involved in her death? Non, mon ami. But secrets breed motives. Returning downstairs, Poirot noted a locked drawer in Miss Langford's desk. When asked, she flushed. Estate papers, nothing more. The day waned, the hall's shadows lengthening. Poirot gathered the suspects again, his questions sharper. Madame Evelyn, your husband's health, did he suspect betrayal? She hesitated. He was distant lately. Business pressures, perhaps. Reginald scoffed. Or her flirting with every man in London. Enough, she snapped, her poise cracking. Dr. Whittaker adjusted his spectacles. Archibald was paranoid. He accused me of mismanaging his funds. Miss Langford remained silent, her notebook a shield. As evening fell, a servant reported a discovery. A footprint in the garden, matching Reginald's boot size, near the cellar window.
You were a mix of curiosity and discomfort. What now, Poirot? He asked, glancing at the towering bookshelves. The glove, the footprint. Where do we start? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign his little grey cells were at work. We start, mon ami, with the past. The history of this house holds the key to its present crime. He turned to the maid who had whispered of attic letters the previous evening. Mademoiselle, you spoke of papers. Show us. The maid, a slight girl named Elsie, led them up a narrow staircase to the attic, her lantern casting flickering shadows on the damp stone walls. The air was thick with dust, the scent of mildew clinging to every surface. Trunks and crates lined the space, relics of the Thornbury legacy piled haphazardly. Poirot moved with purpose, his gloved hands deftly opening a trunk to reveal a bundle of letters tied with a faded crimson ribbon. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded but legible, penned in an elegant hand. Clara Thornbury, Poirot read aloud. The First Lady Thornbury, dead these 20 years. Hastings peered over his shoulder. Dead how, exactly? A fall from a cliff, Poirot replied, his voice low. The coroner ruled it an accident, but whispers of suspicion persisted. These letters may tell us more. The correspondence was intimate, penned to a confidant. Clara wrote of her husband's temper, his growing paranoia, and, most intriguing, a friendship with a young Dr. Harlan Whittaker, then a newly qualified physician. One letter, dated 1907, hinted at more. Harlan understands me as Archibald never could. I fear discovery, yet I cannot turn away. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An affair, perhaps. And if Lord Thornbury knew, what then? Blackmail? Revenge? Hastings frowned. You think Whittaker killed her, and now Archibald? Patience, mon ami. We gather the threads before we weave. They descended to the library, where the suspects awaited under Inspector Japp's watchful eye. Lady Evelyn Thornbury stood by the fireplace, her raven hair catching the firelight, her emerald gown replaced by a sombre black dress that did little to dim her beauty.
Surfacing. Father had secrets, didn't he? Like cutting me from the will for my own mistakes. Hypocrite. Poirot turned to Miss Langford. And you, mademoiselle, you researched the family history for estate matters. Did you know of Clara? The secretary's hands tightened on her notebook. I came across references, old records. It's my job to organize such things. Her voice was steady, but her eyes avoided his. The atmosphere thickened, suspicion coiling like the fog outside. Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. The past casts a long shadow. A wife dead under mysterious circumstances, a doctor with secrets, a son estranged, a widow poised to inherit. And yet the poison was in the present, cyanide in a goblet, administered with precision. Japp interjected, holding up a report. Forensics confirmed the cyanide was in the goblet's coating, not the wine itself, applied before the decanter was poured. Poirot nodded. Then we must look to the cellar where the goblets were stored, and to the motives: greed, revenge, fear. The interviews resumed. Lady Evelyn admitted financial strain. Archibald's mines were failing. Creditors hounded him. He spoke of selling the Hall. Her voice wavered, but her eyes remained dry. Reginald confessed to forging checks in his father's name to cover gambling debts. "Petty theft, not murder," he snapped, though his flushed cheeks suggested shame. Dr. Whittaker revealed a grudge. Lord Thornbury had accused him of malpractice years ago, nearly ruining his career. "I stayed out of loyalty," he said, but his trembling hands told another story. Miss Langford pressed harder, admitted a personal stake. "I discovered I may be connected to the Thornburys. A distant relation, perhaps." Her hesitation hinted at more, but she clammed up. Poirot's mind churned. The letters were a clue, but also a potential red herring. Had someone planted them to shift blame? The footprint near the cellar, matching Reginald's boot, was another puzzle piece. "You claim you were in the garden," Poirot said to the son, "yet your trace is by the cellar window."
Hands pointed to another. "Reginald's, perhaps," Poirot mused. Back upstairs, tensions flared. Lady Evelyn accused Reginald of jealousy. "You hated me for taking your mother's place," Reginald retorted that she married for money, not love. Dr. Whittaker muttered about estate mismanagement, while Miss Langford's silence grew heavier. As evening fell, a storm brewed over the moors, thunder rumbling like an omen. Poirot arranged a reconstruction of the dinner, hoping to jog memories. The suspects reenacted the toast, passing the decanter with halting movements. Lady Evelyn's hand lingered on the goblet. Reginald's grip was unsteady. Whittaker's eyes darted, and Langford hesitated before touching the decanter. Poirot watched, noting every pause, every glance. A servant's cry shattered the moment. "In the garden, sir! Something odd!" They rushed out, the wind whipping their coats. On the path lay a poisoned apple, its flesh laced with a bitter scent. Cyanide again. "Intended for whom?" Hastings asked, his voice tight. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A warning, perhaps, or another distraction. The group returned to the hall, shaken. Poirot addressed them. "Mes amis, the clues multiply, but so do the deceptions. The letters, the vial, the apple, each a thread in a tangled web. Tomorrow, we unravel more." Chapter 4. The Alibi Unravels. The morning of October 18th, 1928, broke over Thornbury Hall with a sullen light. The Yorkshire moors still cloaked in a mist that seemed to mirror the murk of suspicion within the ancient estate. Hercule Poirot stood in the wine cellar, his patent leather shoes a stark contrast to the damp stone floor. His green eyes scanning the racks of dusty bottles that lined the walls like silent sentinels. The faint scent of earth and aged wine hung in the air, undercut by the ghostly memory of cyanide from Lord Archibald Thornbury's fatal toast. Captain Hastings, ever faithful, stood nearby, his face a mix of unease and curiosity as he held a lantern aloft. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot," he muttered, his breath visible in the chill. "Do you really think the poison was added here?"
"Though he swears it was locked all day."
The detective's eyes gleamed. "Then we must question the movements of our suspects. Each alibi, it must be tested." They returned to the library, where the suspects awaited under the watchful gaze of Japp's constables. The room, with its towering bookshelves and crackling fire, felt oppressive, as if the weight of secrets pressed against the oak-paneled walls. Lady Evelyn Thornbury sat by a window, her raven hair pinned with precision, her black mourning dress accentuating her pale beauty. Her green eyes met Poirot's with a flicker of defiance, as if daring him to probe deeper. Reginald Thornbury paced near the fireplace, his youthful face flushed with agitation, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. Dr. Harlan Whittaker, his spectacles glinting,
fidgeted with a pen, his thin frame betraying nervous energy. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, clutched her notebook, her auburn hair tightly bound, her gray eyes guarded as ever. Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, the poison was in the goblet, applied with care. I ask again, where were you before the dinner, when the goblets were prepared? Lady Evelyn spoke first, her tone smooth as silk. I was in the conservatory, arranging flowers for the table. Alone, I'm afraid. No one saw me. Her lips curved faintly, as if the admission were a minor inconvenience. Reginald stopped pacing, his hands clenched. I was in the garden, walking off my nerves. Father and I argued that morning. He refused to reinstate me in the will. But I didn't go near the cellar. Dr. Whittaker cleared his throat. I was in the billiard room with Reginald, discussing his father's health. We were together until just before dinner. Miss Langford hesitated, her fingers tightening on her notebook. I was in my office, typing letters. The typewriter's noise should have been heard, but the servants were busy elsewhere. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Mademoiselle, your alibi lacks witnesses. And you, Monsieur Whittaker, your story depends on Monsieur Reginald. Convenient, no? The doctor flushed. It's the truth, Reginald nodded vigorously. He's right. We were together. But Poirot...
Indiscretions. But I loved him. She produced a folded paper from her reticule, its ink fresh and sharp. Evelyn, your flirtations shame me. I will not be cuckolded, it read, signed by Lord Thornbury. Poirot's gaze shifted to Miss Langford. And the object of his suspicions, Madame named you. The secretary's face drained of colour. Me? That's absurd. He was kind, but nothing more. I'd never— Enough, Lady Evelyn snapped, her voice cutting like a blade. Archibald was delusional. He saw betrayal everywhere. The room crackled with tension. Poirot turned to Dr. Whittaker. And you, monsieur, you supplied sedatives to Lord Thornbury. Did you also supply cyanide? Whittaker's hands trembled. I keep a small amount for medical purposes, locked away. It's missing now, I swear. A red herring emerged. A constable entered, holding a vial found in the doctor's medical bag. Its label reading, potassium cyanide. Whittaker gasped. Planted? I checked my bag yesterday. It wasn't there. Poirot pocketed the vial for analysis. Another distraction, perhaps. But the truth, it hides in the details. The investigation moved to the study, where Poirot examined Lord Thornbury's desk. Papers were scattered, business ledgers showing mounting debts, a draft will leaving all to Lady Evelyn, and a cryptic note, the secretary knows too much. Poirot's brow furrowed. Mademoiselle Langford, what did he mean? She shook her head, her voice barely audible. I don't know. I managed his correspondence. Nothing more. Hastings whispered to Poirot. She's hiding something, isn't she? Oui, but what? Poirot replied softly. And why? The day progressed, and Poirot requested a second reconstruction of the dinner. The suspects, reluctant but compliant, reenacted the passing of the decanter. Lady Evelyn's movements were graceful but deliberate. Reginald's hands shook. Whittaker hesitated before touching the decanter, and Langford's fingers barely grazed it. Poirot watched, noting a faint smudge on the goblet tray, a lipstick stain, the shade matching Lady Evelyn. Emerging near the cellar stairs, Poirot noted scuff marks on the floor, recent perhaps. Someone used this, he said. But who? Back in the library, accusations flew. Reginald pointed at Lady Evelyn. She wanted his money. That's why she married him, she countered, accusing him of plotting to reclaim his inheritance. Whittaker muttered about professional ruin, while Langford's silence grew deafening. As evening fell, a storm gathered, thunder rumbling over the moors. Poirot gathered the suspects once more.
The passage, the lipstick, the vial. These are pieces of a puzzle. But the motive, it eludes us still. Greed? Revenge? Or something deeper? A servant burst in, breathless. "Sir, in the study! A drawer's been forced open! Papers are missing!" Poirot rushed to the scene, finding the desk in disarray. The draft will was gone, but a single sheet remained, a ledger entry showing a large sum transferred to an unknown account. Embezzlement? Poirot mused. Or another distraction? Chapter 5. Secrets in the Shadows. The late afternoon of October 18th, 1928, draped Thornbury Hall in a somber twilight. The Yorkshire moors outside veiled by a storm's gathering clouds. Within the ancient estate, the air was thick with suspicion. The echo of Lord Archibald Thornbury's poisoned death reverberating through every shadowed corner. Hercule Poirot, his immaculate overcoat slightly dusted from the hidden passage's exploration, stood at its exit in the stables, where the scent of hay mingled with the damp chill. A horse whinnied nervously, as if sensing the unrest that gripped the hall. Captain Hastings, holding a lantern, peered into the gloom. "This passage, Poirot, it's a perfect route for a killer. Straight from the library to the cellar, unseen." Poirot's green eyes gleamed under the lantern's flicker. "Oui, mon ami, this corridor, it is a secret vein in the heart of Thornbury Hall. An escape or an entry for the one who coated the goblet. The stables, with access to the cellar. The killer, I believe, used this to tamper with the goblet. Let us revisit your alibis. Where were you before the fatal dinner?" Lady Evelyn spoke first, her tone smooth but strained. "As I said, I was in the conservatory arranging flowers. I had no reason to visit the cellar." Her fingers twisted a lace handkerchief, betraying a flicker of unease. Reginald's jaw tightened. "I was in the garden, as I've told you. I didn't know about any passage." His voice rose, a mix of frustration and fear, his eyes darting to his stepmother. Dr. Whittaker adjusted his spectacles. "I was with Reginald in the billiard room, discussing his father's health. I had no access to the cellar or the passage." Miss Langford's gray eyes met Poirot's briefly before dropping. "I was typing in my office. I didn't know the passage existed." Her hesitation hung in the air, a thread Poirot intended to pull. Japp interjected, holding up a report. "The fingerprint on the decanter. It's not Reginald's. Too small. Possibly a woman's." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Interesting. And the lipstick stain on the goblet tray, Madame Evelyn, it matches your shade." She stiffened. "I may have touched the tray earlier, setting the table. I told you this." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone neutral. "But the passage suggests another possibility." He turned to the group. "Let us explore motives. Madame, you stood to inherit a fortune, yet the estate is near bankruptcy. Did you know?" Lady Evelyn's composure cracked. "Archibald confided in me last month. The mines failed, creditors pressed. He planned to sell the hall. I urged him to fight, but he was tired." Her voice wavered, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. Reginald scoffed. "Tired? He was cruel. He cut me out for one mistake, a scandal he exaggerated. I forged checks, yes, to survive after he disowned me. But murder? Never." Dr. Whittaker cleared his throat. "Lord Thornbury ruined my practice years ago with false accusations of negligence. I stayed out of duty, but I resented him. Still, Passing the decanter. Japp produced another clue. A servant's glove found in the dining room with a faint residue of cyanide. The servant, a young maid named Bessie, had an ironclad alibi,
She was in the kitchen all evening, vouched for by the cook.
Another red herring, Poirot murmured, planted to confuse.
The investigation moved to the study, where the forced drawer had yielded a missing will but left a ledger entry. A transfer of £10,000 to an unknown account. Embezzlement? Hastings suggested.
Or a bribe, Poirot replied. We must trace this.
He questioned the suspects further. Lady Evelyn admitted to bruises hidden under her sleeves, gifts from her husband's temper. He was kind at first, but the deaths changed him. He struck me in private. Her voice was low, her eyes averted. Reginald's anger flared. Lies! She manipulated him for the money! Whittaker confessed to prescribing cyanide for medical use, kept under lock. It was stolen from my office, he insisted, though his trembling hands suggested doubt. Langford produced a forged document claiming her heritage found in the attic. I meant to confront him, not kill him, she said, tears welling. Poirot arranged another reconstruction, this time in the cellar. The suspects handled replicas of the goblets, their movements hesitant. Lady Evelyn's fingers lingered on the tray. Reginald fumbled. Whittaker avoided touching it, and Langford's hands shook. Poirot noted a faint scratch on the tray, a mark of tampering. As night fell, the storm broke, thunder shaking the hall's ancient stones. A servant reported a break-in at the study, more papers scattered, a window forced open. Poirot rushed to the scene, finding a torn letter fragment. The truth lies in the mines. Was it a clue to the embezzlement, or another deception? The group gathered in the library, the fire casting long shadows. Poirot addressed them. The passage, the glove, the ledger, these point to a killer among you. But the motive remains elusive. Greed? Vengeance? Or a deeper betrayal? A sudden noise, a creak from the hidden passage, interrupted. Japp drew
unease. This place feels cursed, Poirot, he murmured, glancing at the portraits lining the walls, their stern eyes seeming to judge the living. That passage, the vial, the apple, what's next? Poirot's green eyes twinkled, undaunted. Mon ami, there is no curse, only human greed and guile. The poisoned chalice, it was no accident. The cyanide was in the goblet, coated before the wine was poured. We must unravel who and why. His gloved hand held a shard of the broken goblet, its crystal surface etched with the Thornbury crest, though a faint alteration caught his eye, a scratch, perhaps deliberate. Symbolic, no? A mark of betrayal. Inspector Japp, his moustache bristling, entered with a forensic report. The residue on the goblet tray, definitely cyanide, applied with precision, likely hours before dinner. The passage makes it possible to slip in unnoticed. Poirot nodded, his little grey cells humming. Then we focus on opportunity and motive. Let us gather the suspects once more. In the library, the air was thick with tension, the fire's crackle barely softening the silence. Lady Evelyn Thornbury sat by a window, her raven hair framed by a black shawl, her green eyes cool but wary. Her morning gown clung to her slender frame, and faint bruises peeked from beneath her sleeves, marks of her late husband's cruelty, she claimed. Reginald Thornbury slouched in an armchair, his blonde hair falling into his bloodshot eyes, a glass of brandy trembling in his hand. Dr. Harlan Whittaker, his spectacles fogging, clutched a medical journal, his thin face pale with strain. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, sat at her desk, her auburn hair tightly bound, her notebook open but untouched, her grey eyes guarded. Poirot began, his voice steady yet sharp. Mesdames et messieurs, The goblet was poisoned in the cellar via the hidden passage. Each of you had access, each of you a motive. Let us examine these threads. He turned to Lady Evelyn. Madam, you vial kept locked. It was stolen, I swear. He produced a record showing the prescription, dated weeks earlier, but his trembling fingers suggested fear. Miss Langford pressed again, clutched her forged heritage papers. I sought my rightful place as Clara's daughter. Archibald denied me, but I didn't poison him. I wanted justice, not revenge. Her voice broke, her grey eyes pleading. Poirot paced, his cane tapping rhythmically. The motives are clear: greed, vengeance, betrayal. But the evidence, it shifts like the Moor's mist. He held up the goblet shard, its scratched crest glinting. This mark, deliberate perhaps? A sign of the killer's intent? Japp produced another clue, a servant's glove. Tested positive for cyanide residue, but the maid, Bessie, was in the kitchen all evening. Another plant, Poirot murmured. The killer is clever, sowing confusion. The investigation moved to the cellar, where Poirot examined the goblet tray again. The faint scratch he'd noted earlier matched the goblet's altered crest. A deliberate act? A smudged fingerprint, too small for Reginald's, pointed to a woman. Madame Evelyn? Poirot asked, his eyes fixed on her. I set the table, she insisted. I may have touched the tray, but I didn't coat the goblet. Hastings whispered, She's hiding something, Poirot. Those bruises, real or staged? Patience, mon ami, Poirot replied. All will be tested. Back in the library, Poirot requested a third reconstruction of the dinner, focusing on the goblet's handling. The suspects, tense and reluctant, reenacted the toast. Lady Evelyn's movements were precise, almost too perfect. Reginald's hands shook. Whittaker avoided the tray. Langford barely touched it. Poirot noted a hesitation in Whittaker's glance. A flicker of guilt? A servant interrupted, breathless. Sir, a note was slipped under the study door, addressed to you. Poirot opened it, revealing a scrawled message. The widow lies. Meet at midnight in the crypt. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the paper plain. Abusive marriage? Reginald's rage at disinheritance? Whittaker's fear of exposure? Or Langford's quest for legitimacy? The clock neared midnight, the storm's roar shaking the hall. Poirot prepared for the crypt meeting, instructing Japp to station constables nearby. We take no chances, he said, his cane tapping as he descended to the cellar stairs, leading to the crypt's iron gate. In the crypt, the air was cold and damp, the stone walls glistening under the lantern's glow. Poirot waited, his senses sharp. Footsteps echoed. A figure emerged from the shadows. Miss Langford, her face pale, whispered, I sent the note. I know something. Before she could speak, a shadow lunged, Reginald eavesdropping. Traitor! He hissed, grabbing her arm. Poirot intervened, his voice sharp. Enough! This proves nothing. Langford, shaken, spoke quickly. Dr. Whittaker, he knew about Clara's death. There's a diary hidden in his office. It might explain everything. Poirot's eyes narrowed. We shall investigate. But for now, return to your rooms. Back upstairs, Poirot found the diary in Whittaker's desk, a small leather-bound volume. Its pages detailed Clara's affair and her fear of Archibald's wrath. Suspicious, Poirot murmured. But is it motive for murder now? Chapter 7. Midnight Revelations. The storm that ravaged Thornbury Hall on the night of October 18, 1928, roared with a fury that seemed to shake the very foundations of the ancient estate. Rain lashed the Gothic windows, and lightning illuminated the Yorkshire moors in stark, fleeting glimpses, casting eerie shadows across the stone walls.
Hercule Poirot stood in the crypt beneath the hall, the damp air chilling his bones despite his immaculate overcoat. His lantern cast a feeble glow on the moss-covered tombs, their inscriptions worn by time, and the faint drip of water echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. Captain Hastings, clutching his revolver with a trembling hand, stood at his side, his honest face pale with apprehension. "This place is ghastly, Poirot," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm's din. "A trap, surely." Poirot, "Traitor!" he hissed, grabbing her arm. "You're trying to pin this on me." Poirot's cane rapped sharply on the stone floor. "Enough, Monsieur Reginald. Release her. This proves nothing but your temper." His voice, calm yet commanding, halted the struggle. Reginald stepped back, his chest heaving, while Langford clutched her arm, her breath ragged. "Speak, mademoiselle," Poirot urged. "What do you know?" Langford's voice was low, urgent. "Dr. Whittaker. He was involved with my mother, Clara, the First Lady Thornbury. I found a diary in his office. It suggests he hastened her death. A fall from a cliff, they said. But she was afraid of Archibald and of Whittaker. I think he killed her, and now Archibald, to cover it up." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A grave accusation. Where is this diary?" "In his desk, locked in a hidden compartment. I saw it when I borrowed his keys to file papers." Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Poirot! If it's true—" "Silence, mon ami," Poirot said softly. "We verify before we accuse." Footsteps echoed above, and Inspector Japp appeared, his mustache bristling under his lantern's light. "What's this commotion? Constables heard shouting," Poirot explained briefly, then led the group back to the library, the storm's thunder shaking the walls. The suspects were summoned, their faces a gallery of unease. Lady Evelyn Thornbury sat by the fire, her raven hair gleaming, her black gown accentuating her pale beauty, though her green eyes flickered with suspicion. Reginald paced, his youthful features flushed with anger. Dr. Harlan Whittaker, his spectacles fogging, gripped his chair, his thin frame trembling. Langford stood apart, her notebook clutched like a shield. Poirot held up the anonymous note. "Mademoiselle Langford claims Dr. Whittaker has a diary implicating him in Clara Thornbury's death. Doctor, will you open your desk?" Whittaker's face drained of color. "This is outrageous. I've no such diary." But under Poirot's unrelenting gaze, he unlocked a drawer, revealing a hip. "Diary proves he had a motive. He feared Archibald would expose him." Poirot paced, his cane tapping. "The diary is a clue, but not proof. Let us return to the murder. The cyanide was in the goblet, applied via the hidden passage. Dr. Whittaker, you had access to cyanide. Was it truly stolen?" Whittaker's hands shook. "I swear it was. I kept it locked as I showed you." Poirot turned to Lady Evelyn. "Madame, your fingerprints were on the cellar key. You visited before dinner, no?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I checked the wine stock for Archibald. He was particular. But I didn't touch the goblets." Japp produced a new clue, a letter found in the study from a business rival threatening Archibald over unpaid debts. "Could be motive," Japp said, "but the rival's been in Paris all week." "A red herring," Poirot murmured. "The killer is among us." The investigation deepened. Poirot examined the cellar key, noting a faint scratch, recent, perhaps from forcing a lock. He questioned the butler, Harrow, who swore the key never left his pantry. Someone copied it, Poirot deduced, or used the passage to bypass it. Back in the library, accusations flew. Reginald accused Lady Evelyn of greed. She knew the estate was bankrupt. She wanted the insurance.
she countered, accusing him of plotting to reclaim his inheritance through murder. Whitaker muttered about professional ruin, while Langford's silence grew heavier. Poirot arranged another reconstruction, this time focusing on the cellar's preparation. The suspects handled replica goblets, their movements tense. Lady Evelyn's fingers lingered on the tray. Reginald fumbled. Whitaker hesitated, and Langford barely touched it. Poirot noted a faint almond scent on Whitaker's handkerchief tucked in his pocket. "Curieux," he murmured. "A trace of cyanide?" Whitaker paled. "I handle chemicals in my work. It's nothing." The storm's fury peaked, lightning illuminating the library's grim faces. Poirot addressed the group. "The clues multiply. The diary, the key, the handkerchief. But the motive, greed, revenge, or fear?"
Lord Archibald Thornbury's murder. Rain lashed the Gothic windows, casting rivulets that distorted the firelight within the dining room, where Hercule Poirot had gathered the suspects for a pivotal confrontation. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and wood smoke, undercut by the lingering memory of cyanide that had claimed the Lord's life 4 nights prior. Poirot stood at the head of the long mahogany table, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his green eyes sharp beneath his meticulously waxed moustache. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his honest face taut with anticipation, his hand resting near his revolver. "This feels like the end game, Poirot," he whispered. "Are you sure about this?" Poirot's voice was calm, authoritative. "Mon ami, the storm outside mirrors the storm within. The truth, it is near. We must provoke it into the open." His cane tapped rhythmically as he surveyed the suspects, each seated as they had been during the fatal dinner. Lady Evelyn Thornbury, the widow, sat with regal poise, her raven hair framed by a black morning gown, though her green eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Reginald Thornbury, the estranged son, slouched in his chair, his blonde hair dishevelled, his youthful face etched with defiance and fatigue. Dr. Harlan Whitaker, the family physician, adjusted his spectacles, his thin frame trembling slightly, his hands clutching a medical journal as if it were a lifeline. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, sat rigidly, her auburn hair tightly bound, her grey eyes guarded behind her ever-present notebook. Inspector Japp stood by the fireplace, his burly frame and bristling moustache a steady presence, his notebook open to the latest forensic findings. Poirot began, his voice cutting through the storm's din. "Mesdames et messieurs, we stand where Lord Thornbury died, poisoned by cyanide in his goblet during a toast. The method is clear. The poison was coated on the goblet's interior, applied via the hidden passage to the cellar. The motive, however, remains a tangle of greed, revenge, and betrayal." His throat, his voice unsteady. "I've told you, my cyanide was stolen. I had no reason to kill him. He was my patient, my employer." Miss Langford, pressed by Poirot's piercing stare, spoke softly. "I sought my heritage, nothing more. I didn't poison him, though he denied my claim." Her fingers tightened on her notebook, her eyes avoiding his. Poirot paced, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. "Let us dispel the red herrings. The vial in Dr. Whitaker's bag, planted, I believe, to shift blame. The footprint by the cellar, possibly Miss Langford's shoe, borrowed by another. The servant's glove with cyanide residue, a distraction, as the maid was in the kitchen." He paused, holding up the goblet shard with its scratched crest. "But this mark on the goblet, it is deliberate, a sign of intent." Japp interjected, holding up a report.
The handkerchief in Whitaker's pocket, traces of cyanide. Care to explain, Doctor? Whitaker's spectacles slipped. I handle chemicals daily. It's residue from my work, nothing more. His voice cracked, his hands trembling violently. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And the diary, Doctor, found in your desk. It speaks of Clara Thornbury's fear, your intimacy with her. Did Lord Thornbury threaten to expose you? Whitaker's face paled. He suspected, yes, but I didn't kill him. I stayed out of loyalty to Clara's memory. Lady Evelyn's voice cut through. Loyalty? You betrayed my husband's trust then and now. Her composure shattered, her eyes blazing. Reginald smirked. He's not the only one. Father thought you were unfaithful, Evelyn, with her. He pointed at Langford, who gasped. Absurd, Langford snapped. He was kind, nothing more. Poirot raised a hand. Enough. Let us reconstruct the toast once more. Watch closely. The suspects, tense and reluctant, reenacted the ritual, passing a replica decanter. Lady Evelyn's movements were precise. Reginald's hands shook. Whitaker hesitated, and Langford barely touched the decanter. Poirot noted a faint tremor in Whitaker's grip. Chair. I took funds. Yes, Archibald discovered it. He threatened to ruin me. But I didn't kill him. I supplied cyanide for his own use. He was desperate. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A lie. The goblet was coated with precision, not a suicide's act. The room fell silent, the storm's roar filling the void. Poirot turned to the group. The clues align. The passage, the handkerchief, the diary, the ledger. The killer sought to silence Lord Thornbury, but why? Greed? Fear? Revenge? A sudden gunshot rang out from the gardens, shattering the tension. Japp drew his revolver, shouting, "Stay here!" The group rushed to the window, rain blurring the view. A constable's lantern bobbed outside, followed by Japp's voice, "An intruder! Fleeing!" Poirot remained calm, his mind racing. Another distraction, perhaps, or a desperate act. He addressed the suspects. "The net tightens, mes amis. Tomorrow we shall have our truth." Chapter 9. The Final Clues. The storm that had battered Thornbury Hall through the night of October 18th, 1928, began to wane by the morning of October 19th, leaving a sodden calm over the Yorkshire moors. The ancient estate stood resolute, its Gothic spires piercing a sky now streaked with pale light. But within its walls the tension was electric, as if the air itself held its breath for the unravelling of Lord Archibald Thornbury's murder. Hercule Poirot stood in the garden, his patent leather shoes muddied despite his care, his green eyes scanning the path where the gunshot had rung out hours before. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, his face pale from the night's chaos. "That shot, Poirot," he said, his voice tight. "It's got to mean something. An intruder, or one of them trying to escape." Poirot's mustache twitched, his little grey cells in overdrive. "Mon ami, the gunshot is a flare in the fog. A distraction, perhaps, or a desperate act. But the truth, it lies closer. The killer is among us, and the clues, they converge." He jested, though her green eyes flickered with unease. Reginald Thornbury paced near the fireplace, his blonde hair dishevelled, his youthful face etched with anger and exhaustion. Dr. Harlan Whitaker, his spectacles fogging, clutched a handkerchief, its faint almond scent unnoticed by all but Poirot. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, sat at her desk, her auburn hair bound, her grey eyes guarded behind her notebook. Poirot's voice cut through the silence, calm yet commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the hour grows late.
Lord Thornbury was poisoned by cyanide in his goblet, coated via the hidden passage. The clues, the diary, the handkerchief, the ledger, the lipstick, point to a killer among you. Let us unravel the final threads. He turned to Lady Evelyn. Madame, your fingerprints on the cellar key, your lipstick on the goblet tray. You insist you checked the wine, but did you coat the goblet? Her lips tightened, her voice steady but strained. I've told you, I touched the tray while setting the table. I didn't poison him. Archibald was cruel, yes, but I loved him, despite his faults. Her sleeve slipped, revealing a fading bruise, a silent testament to her claim. Reginald scoffed. Love? You married him for the money. The estate's bankrupt. She needed the insurance. His hands clenched, his eyes blazing with accusation. Poirot's gaze shifted. And you, Monsieur Reginald, your footprint by the cellar window, your forged checks. Your father's refusal to reinstate you, was it motive enough? Reginald's face flushed. I hated him for cutting me off, but I didn't kill him. I wanted his respect, not his blood. His voice cracked, betraying a mix of grief and defiance. Dr. Whittaker, pressed by Poirot's piercing stare, stammered, I admitted to taking funds. Archibald threatened to expose me, but I swear I didn't poison him. His handkerchief fluttered, the almond scent stronger now. Miss Langford spoke softly, her voice trembling. I forged papers to claim my heritage as Clara's daughter. I confronted Archibald, but he dismissed me.
Out. He was going to ruin me. But I didn't kill him. I suggested he use the cyanide himself to escape his debts. He refused. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A lie. Tests show no illness, no suicidal intent. The goblet was coated with precision. A murderer's act. The room fell silent, the fire's crackle the only sound. Poirot turned to the group. Let us reconstruct the toast one final time. Watch the movements. The suspects, tense and reluctant, reenacted the ritual, passing a replica decanter. Lady Evelyn's hands were steady, Reginald's shook. Whittaker hesitated, and Langford barely touched it. Poirot noted a faint tremor in Whittaker's grip, a glance toward the hidden passage. He led the group to the passage's entrance, its damp walls glistening under the lantern's light. This route allowed the killer to reach the cellar unseen. The scuff marks, the mud, they point to a recent visitor. He paused, his voice sharp. Doctor, your handkerchief betrays you. The almond scent is not from your work. It is from handling the cyanide used to kill. Whittaker's face drained of color. You're wrong. I'm innocent. Poirot turned to Langford. Mademoiselle, your forged papers, clever, but a distraction. Your motive was recognition, not murder. She nodded, tears streaming. I only wanted my mother's name. Reginald's voice rose. Then it's her. He pointed at Lady Evelyn. She had the most to gain. Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed. I poured the wine, yes, but I didn't poison it. I'm no killer. Poirot raised a hand. No, the clues align, but one piece remains. He produced the diary, its pages detailing Clara's fear of both Archibald and Whittaker. The past and present converge. The killer sought to silence a threat. But what? A servant burst in, breathless. Sir, a letter was found in the cellar, hidden in a bottle. Poirot opened it, revealing a scrawled note. The mines hold the secret. Look deeper. His eyes gleamed. The mines.
Polished parquet. The chandelier above cast a soft glow, its candlelight flickering over the table where the poisoned goblet had shattered.
leaving only echoes of cyanide and deception. Captain Hastings stood by the window, his honest face taut with expectation, his eyes scanning the moors beyond. "This is it, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "You've got them cornered, haven't you?" Poirot's green eyes twinkled, his mustache twitching with the certainty of his little grey cells. "Oui, mon ami. The truth, it is like a fine tapestry, woven from many threads, but now complete. The killer is among us. And today, we unveil them." His cane tapped rhythmically as he surveyed the assembled suspects, gathered once more where the crime had occurred. Lady Evelyn Thornbury sat at the table's head, her raven hair pinned with precision, her black morning gown accentuating her pale beauty. Her green eyes, though composed, held a flicker of apprehension. Reginald Thornbury slouched in his chair, his blonde hair disheveled, his youthful face a mask of defiance and exhaustion. Dr. Harlan Whitaker, his spectacles fogging, clutched his handkerchief, its faint almond scent a silent accusation. Miss Victoria Langford, the secretary, sat rigidly, her auburn hair tightly bound, her gray eyes guarded behind her notebook. Inspector Japp stood by the fireplace, his burly frame steady, his mustache bristling as he held a forensic report, ready to back Poirot's deductions. Poirot began, his voice calm yet commanding, filling the room like a conductor before a symphony. "Mesdames et messieurs, 5 nights ago, Lord Archibald Thornbury died here, poisoned by cyanide in his goblet during a toast. The method was precise. The poison coated the goblet's interior, applied via the hidden passage to the cellar. The motive has eluded us: greed, revenge, betrayal, but no longer. The clues, the diary, the handkerchief, the ledger, the lipstick, the passage have spoken. Today, we reveal the truth." He turned to the group, his gaze piercing. "Let us dispel the red herrings. The servant's glove with cyanide residue? Planted. Picture of desperation. Did you seek escape from an abusive husband?" Her composure cracked, her voice trembling. "He struck me, yes, but I loved him. I poured the wine, but I didn't poison it." Her sleeve slipped, revealing faded marks, her eyes glistening with defiance and pain. Poirot raised a hand. "Patience. The truth lies not in passion, but in method." He turned to Dr. Whitaker, his voice sharpening. "Doctor, you are the key. Your handkerchief carries the almond scent of cyanide, not from medical work, but from handling the poison. The diary in your desk reveals your affair with Clara Thornbury and her fear of her husband. And you. The ledger shows £10,000 embezzled, a secret Lord Thornbury discovered. He threatened to expose you, did he not?" Whitaker's spectacles slipped, his face ashen. "I took the money, yes. He was going to ruin me. But I didn't kill him. I suggested he use the cyanide himself to escape his debts. He refused." His voice cracked, his hands trembling violently. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A lie, doctor. Tests show no illness, no suicidal intent. The goblet was coated with precision. A murderer's act. You had access to cyanide, opportunity via the passage, and motive to silence a man who would destroy you." The room fell silent, the fire's crackle the only sound. Whitaker collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. "No, no, you're wrong!" Poirot paced, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. "Let us reconstruct the crime. The goblet was prepared in the cellar, coated with cyanide from your vial. You used the hidden passage to slip in unnoticed, leaving scuff marks and mud. The scratched crest on the goblet, a mark of your intent, perhaps, to tarnish the Thornbury name as Archibald tarnished yours. The handkerchief, carelessly handled,
carried the poison's scent. You knew the family's ritual of passing the decanter, ensuring only his goblet was tainted. Jap interjected, holding up the forensic report. The handkerchief's residue matches the cyanide in the goblet, and the ledger's false account—
Whitaker, you sought to silence a threat, but you wove a web of deception. The diary, planted to implicate others. The vial in your bag, a false clue to shift blame. The passage, your secret path. But the truth, it cannot be hidden from Hercule Poirot. Jap stepped forward, his handcuffs glinting. Harlan Whitaker, you're under arrest for the murder of Lord Archibald Thornbury. The doctor offered no resistance, his shoulders slumping as the constables led him away. The room exhaled, the tension breaking like the storm. Lady Evelyn wept openly, her composure shattered, though relief softened her features. "I thought it was me they'd blame," she murmured. "I thought I'd lose everything." Reginald approached her, his anger fading. I misjudged you, Evelyn. I'm sorry." His voice was gruff, a tentative step toward reconciliation. Langford stood, her voice quiet. "My papers were forged, I admit. But I'll leave now. No more claims." Her eyes met Poirot's, seeking forgiveness. Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle, seek your truth honestly. The past is heavy, but the future is yours." As the constables escorted Whitaker out, the dawn's light streamed through the windows, bathing the dining room in gold. The shadows of Thornbury Hall seemed to lift, the moors beyond glowing with a tentative peace. Poirot addressed the group one final time. "Justice, she is served. The order and method of Hercule Poirot have prevailed." Hastings clapped his shoulder, a grin breaking through. "You've done it again, old chap. A devil of a case." Poirot's moustache twitched with a modest smile. "The little grey cells, mon ami. They do not fail." He turned to the window, the moors stretching endlessly before him. "Now, we leave this house to heal, and we return to the world."